The boot came down on my spine with such force that the crack echoed across the quiet community like a gunshot. I collapsed face first onto the concrete, my military medals and photographs scattered beneath me. At 65, after serving 3 decades in the Marine Corps, I found myself whispering words I never thought I'd say. James, I can't feel my legs. The worst part? The man who did this wasn't even a Real security guard. But what happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. It was supposed to be a peaceful Saturday afternoon. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves as I sat on our community bench, sharing stories of my military career with interested neighbors. My husband James relaxed nearby, occasionally adding details I'd forgotten. My service medals gleamed in the sunlight: Silver Star, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, each one a chapter of sacrifice. After 30 years defending freedom, I thought I'd earned the right to peaceful retirement. I was wrong. A white golf cart with hastily painted "Community Security" lettering screeched to a halt nearby. 2 men jumped out, wearing cheap uniforms and permanent scowls. Neither had badges, identification, or any trace of real authority. "Hey," the taller one barked, adjusting his ill-fitting security cap. "What do you think you're doing?" I looked up, startled. "Sharing some old war stories." "Is there a problem?" "You're displaying unauthorized items on community property," the second one snapped, waving a clipboard like it contained divine law. "That's a violation of community guidelines." James stood up, brow furrowed. "Excuse me? She's just showing some photographs." The taller guard cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Your wife is cluttering a community recreational space. That's a Class C violation." "I served this country for 30 years, I replied, my voice steady. "These medals represent American sacrifice." "Should have read the rules," clipboard man added coldly. "Displays require prior authorization. Pack it up." I began gathering my things, not out of obedience, but to avoid escalation. My years in command had taught me when to engage and when to strategically withdraw. But something in their posture, the way they loomed, eyes narrowed, triggered my combat instincts. These weren't professionals, they were bullies with false badges. I said, "Hurry up." The taller one stepped forward and knocked a framed photograph from my hands. It shattered on the concrete: my unit in Afghanistan, faces now hidden behind spiderwebbed glass. "That's enough," James shouted, stepping between us. "You have no authority here." What happened next unfolded with terrible precision. The taller guard shoved James aside, then turned to me with rage distorting his features. I stood my ground, shoulders back, the stance of a Marine officer. That seemed to infuriate him further. "You think your medals make you special?" he snarled, then placed his heavy boot squarely between my shoulder blades and slammed me forward onto the concrete. The crack was louder than it should have been. My medals scattered like fallen stars. Pain erupted white-hot, then vanished into terrifying numbness. My legs, once strong enough to carry wounded comrades through gunfire, now lay useless beneath me. "James," I whispered, tasting blood on my lips, "I can't feel my legs." His face went pale. Then something changed in his eyes, cold fury replacing fear. "You just assaulted a federal prison warden," he told the suddenly silent guard. "And trust me, that's the least important title she holds." Everything after that happened in rapid flashes. I don't remember James crossing the distance to the taller guard, just the dull thud as he tackled him off me. My husband's forearm pinned the man to the ground, his breath leaving him in panicked gasps. "Sarah. Sarah, stay still." Our neighbor Elena knelt beside me, her nursing training taking over. "Don't move your neck." Blood pooled beneath my nose. My fingers twitched, but my legs remained terrifyingly still. The second guard backed away, stammering excuses. "We were enforcing community policy," he insisted, voice cracking. "They're not even real security," someone shouted. "That patch is just fabric store garbage." Phones were out now, recording everything. Neighbors converged from all directions, some gasping, others calling 911. Elena's husband draped his jacket over my shoulders while she kept my neck stable. James turned the guard beneath him over and grabbed his collar. "You think you're in charge of something?" he growled. "You just broke the spine of a decorated Marine veteran. Do you understand what you've done?" The guard tried to speak. James slammed his fist into the concrete beside the man's head. "Shut up," he hissed. "You've said enough." The guard's eyes widened with growing fear as he looked at the ring of outraged neighbors surrounding them. James leaned closer. "You just paralyzed a 65-year-old decorated veteran with a boot to her spine. And guess what?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "She's Sarah Parker, Warden of Pine Grove Correctional. The prison you'll be sent to if you're lucky." The guard blinked, uncomprehending. "Pray the police arrive before I forget my wife would want me to show restraint," James added. Sirens wailed in the distance as 2 patrol cars skidded into the community square. 4 officers stepped out, taking in the chaotic scene, my husband restraining a man, me lying motionless under a neighbor's jacket, a circle of witnesses with phones recording everything. "Sir, we need you to let him go," one officer called, approaching cautiously. "She can't feel her legs," James replied, not releasing his grip. "Secure him first." "I'm Warden Sarah Parker," I managed to say, my voice stronger than I felt. "Federal Corrections. Class A security clearance. These men assaulted me under false authority." The officers exchanged glances. From the crowd came murmurs: "Spinal injury, fake guards, attacked a veteran, there's video." Only when handcuffs clicked around the wrists of both guards did James release his hold and return to my side, his hand finding mine as paramedics arrived. "Probable spinal trauma," one said quietly to his partner. "Immediate immobilization required." Hours later, I stared at the hospital ceiling as the neurosurgeon delivered the news. James sat beside me, clutching my hand so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "There's spinal compression and vertebral fractures," the doctor explained. "We're scheduling surgery, but you're showing signs of incomplete paraplegia." "Incomplete?" James asked, voice barely audible. "Some neural response remains," the doctor replied gently. "There's hope, but recovery will be a long road." "I'll walk again," I stated, the same way I'd once announced military objectives, not a wish, but a mission to be accomplished. Even if I have to crawl through hell to make it happen. Outside my hospital room, chaos was unfolding. By morning, local news vans crowded the hospital parking lot. By evening, national networks picked up the story. The footage was impossible to ignore: a senior female veteran slammed face down, metals scattering, blood on concrete, my husband's voice cutting through the chaos. "You better pray the cops get here before I do something you'll really regret." That clip alone had been shared 1,000,000 times by Tuesday. The investigation revealed an elaborate scam. Our community had dissolved its security team months ago due to budget cuts, but these men, David Kirby and Nolan Hayes, had continued collecting paychecks by intimidating residents with fake violations, unauthorized fines, and threatening notices. It was a slow, creeping con that preyed on fear of rules, of authority, of community sanctions. And it ended when they broke the spine of a decorated veteran. My inbox filled with messages, news anchors, veterans advocates, lawmakers, even a senator's aide. But the message that stopped me cold came from my deputy warden: "You want them at Pine Grove? Consider it done. Both of them." I closed my eyes, not in vengeance but in certainty. Justice would find its way home. 3 weeks later, I sat in my wheelchair in the courtroom, back straight despite the pain radiating through my damaged spine. The prosecution had just played the video footage for the 5th time. Every detail was there: my medals on display, the guard's arrival, the escalation, the boot coming down between my shoulder blades, the terrible crack, my husband's protective rage. David Kirby and Nolan Hayes sat at the defense table, shoulders hunched, the swagger gone. Their poorly fitted suits couldn't hide how they'd shrunk since that Saturday afternoon. When called to testify, I wheeled myself to the stand. I didn't need assistance, a small victory from weeks of physical therapy. I swore to tell the truth, then faced the jury. After 30 years in the Marine Corps, including 2 combat tours, I began, voice steady. I never expected my greatest battle would be on American soil, in my own community, against men pretending to have authority. I detailed everything, the fake security operation, the harassment of elderly residents, the intimidation tactics. I explained how they targeted those least likely to question authority, new residents, immigrants, the elderly, and even combat veterans trained to respect chain of command. These men didn't just attack me, I concluded. They attacked the trust that holds communities together. They weaponized our respect for rules against us. When James testified, his composure nearly broke. She asked me if her medals had caused this, he said at one point. 3 jurors visibly flinched. The defense struggled. They claimed confusion, miscommunication, that the use of force was a tragic misunderstanding during what they believed was lawful enforcement. But by now, everyone knew better. This wasn't enforcement. It was predatory intimidation in uniform. The prosecution revealed the full scope, fake violation notices, a rigged community website, even an offshore PayPal funnel marked, community violations. They'd been running a racketeering operation in plain sight, collecting thousands from frightened residents. And the most twisted part, the prosecutor said, is that people paid out of fear. Elderly widows, busy young families, veterans who'd been trained to follow authority, they paid hundreds for dirty lawn edges, unapproved garden decorations, excessive holiday lighting. As closing arguments finished, I looked at the 2 men who had changed my life forever. Not in anger, but with the clear-eyed assessment I'd used evaluating inmates for 3 decades. They weren't evil. They were opportunists who never expected consequences. The verdict came back in less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentence followed a week later, 18 years for Kirby with no chance of parole. 12 for Hayes. The judge cited the unconscionable targeting of vulnerable community members, and the life-altering assault on a decorated public servant, as factors in the severe sentencing. As they were led away in handcuffs, I caught Kirby's eye. He looked away first. Outside on the courthouse steps, cameras clicked and questions flew. I didn't gloat. I simply stated, today isn't about retribution. It's about restoration, of justice, of community trust, and of the values I spent my life defending. James stood behind my wheelchair, his hand on my shoulder. The reporters couldn't see what I could feel, the slightest tingling in my left foot. The first signal that my battle wasn't over. I returned to Pine Grove Correctional 3 months after the attack, not at full capacity, but unwilling to abandon my post. The staff welcomed me with respectful nods, no pity in their eyes, exactly as I'd trained them. My wheelchair moved smoothly through the facility I'd run for 8 years, built to ADA specifications on my orders long before I needed them myself. Kirby and Hayes arrived on a Tuesday morning transfer. I sat in the intake office reviewing their files when the doors opened. Kirby entered first, wrists cuffed, eyes on the floor. He'd lost weight. The false confidence was gone, replaced by the wary shuffle of a man learning to navigate a world where he no longer made the rules. Name? I asked, voice neutral, professional. David Allen Kirby, he mumbled, then looked up. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by dread. You assaulted a federal officer, impersonated security personnel, ran a criminal enterprise, and permanently injured a decorated veteran, I stated, checking boxes on his intake form. Welcome to Pine Grove. Hayes entered next, already pale. He'd heard the rumors during transport, that the warden they'd attacked would be overseeing their incarceration. He swallowed hard when he saw me. I didn't abuse my position. I didn't place them in extra hardship. I simply ensured they received no special treatment or protective custody. They would serve their time in general population, just like anyone else. That evening, a guard approached me as I finished paperwork. "Ma'am," word spreading among the inmates. "They've seen the news. They know who those two are and what they did." I paused. "Do they know my background?" The guard nodded. "They know you served. Especially Rodriguez. His sister was Marine Corps too. He saw your photo in the newspaper during yard time." I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't naive enough to encourage inmates to enact justice. But I also wasn't naive enough to interfere with karma when it walked through the front gate. "Ensure all standard protocols are followed," I finally said. No more, no less. As I wheeled out of my office that evening, I passed the general housing unit. Through the reinforced glass, I could see Kirby and Hayes sitting alone in the cafeteria, untouched food before them, surrounded by empty seats, islands in a sea of silent judgment. No name tags, no clipboards, no fake authority. Just faces the whole country had seen 100 times in viral videos titled, "The Fake Security Attackers." The story grew beyond me, beyond Kirby and Hayes, beyond even our small community. It touched something raw in America's consciousness, questions about authority, about who we empower, about how easily uniforms can become weapons. Late-night hosts played the footage. Jimmy Fallon showed it. So did Colbert. Memes spread, security for who? Stolen valor versus real valor. One showed Kirby screaming over my scattered medals captioned, "Sir, your Bronze Star violates Community Regulation number 666. But it wasn't just humor. There was outrage and momentum. I launched the Community Integrity Alliance within a month of the verdict. Using my corrections background and military connections, I created a watchdog initiative. I called in favors from state senators, county board members, retired judges. I even persuaded a talk show host I'd once guided through prison reform initiatives to amplify our message. We gathered reports of fake security operations, created a verification database, provided free legal advice to elderly victims, and we named names. Within 3 months, we exposed 4 more fraudulent security teams in neighboring counties. We brought down a group in Nevada that threatened families with eviction over unauthorized holiday decorations. We took down a man in Texas who fined parents for children playing too loudly in their own yards. My medals, once scattered across concrete, became our symbol. Particularly the Bronze Star, digitally cleaned up, emblazoned on yard signs, T-shirts, and bumper stickers, "Real authority serves, not threatens." Local governments began issuing digital certification badges to legitimate community security teams. Homeowners organized real oversight committees. The fake authority figures scattered like cockroaches exposed to sudden light. The most meaningful victory came 6 months after the attack. I received a call from an elderly woman in Florida who'd paid nearly $5,000 in fake violations to men impersonating homeowners association officers. "I saw you on the news," she said, voice trembling. I thought I was the only one too afraid to question them. She wasn't. Hundreds of others came forward, many veterans themselves, who'd been specifically targeted because of their ingrained respect for authority. At the center of this reckoning was Project Safeguard, a nationwide nonprofit I launched with a retired JAG officer. We raised over $800,000 in 8 months. We built community verification systems, established rapid response legal teams, installed security cameras in vulnerable neighborhoods. Each initiative included education about legitimate versus fraudulent authority. As my physical therapy progressed, so did our impact. The movement wasn't about me anymore, it had become about protecting the vulnerable from those who would exploit trust for profit. The hardest battles weren't fought in courtrooms or community meetings, but in physical therapy rooms with unforgiving equipment and merciless pain. 3 times a week, I faced the limitations of my damaged body with the same discipline I'd applied in the Marines. "Push through the pain, Warden Parker," my therapist Marcus would say, supporting my weight as I attempted to stand between parallel bars. Just like basic training. I'd laugh through gritted teeth. Basic was easier. The first time I moved my toes intentionally, James wept. The first time I stood unassisted for 10 seconds, my entire therapy team cheered. Small victories in a war against nerve damage and scar tissue. On difficult days, I'd look at the photographs on my therapy room wall, my unit in Afghanistan, my prison staff, my medal ceremony. They reminded me that I had never been defined by my physical capabilities alone, but by determination and purpose. 6 months after the attack, I took my first unassisted steps, just 3 shaky paces with a walker, but they were mine. James recorded it, his phone trembling with emotion. "That's one step for me," I said, smiling through exhaustion, "and a giant leap for everyone who's been told they don't get to fight back." 12 months after Kirby's boot shattered my spine, I stood at a podium in our community center. No wheelchair, just a simple cane with a Marine Corps eagle on its handle. The room was packed, neighbors, reporters, community leaders from across the state. "We gather today not to remember an attack," I began, "but to celebrate a response. When false authority threatened our community, we didn't just heal, we transformed." I announced the expansion of Project Safeguard to 15 more states, new legislation requiring verification for security personnel, and a veterans advocacy program specifically designed to empower those who've served to question illegitimate authority. "The uniform I wore for 30 years taught me that real authority comes with responsibility," I concluded. Real power protects. It doesn't prey. As I stepped down from the podium, using my cane but walking independently, the applause thundered through the room. Now, each Saturday, James and I walked the same community path where I was attacked. Not in protest, not even in remembrance, but because we choose to reclaim what was taken. Sometimes neighbors join us, sharing stories of service, of recovery, of community. I still visit Kirby and Hayes once a month. Warden's privilege. I never threaten. I never gloat. I simply update them on our progress. The legislation passed today. 10 more fake security teams shut down. And I walked a quarter mile without my cane. Let's continue this fight together. Share your community experiences in the comments. Has someone ever tried to assert false authority over you? Respect and support for each other's stories can help us all stay vigilant. Remember, real authority serves, it doesn't intimidate.